Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and joining me, as always, is, of course, my co-host, Jessica Lewis, who has managed to curse not just one, but two winner picks in 4 episodes.
Oh my God, you remembered. I was so afraid. I'm like, did I actually say that Thomas was my other winner pick option?
You did.
Oh, Thomas, I'm so sorry. I should have never said that out loud. I've definitely cursed you along with Stephanie. I hope they are commiserating together and complaining about me because that would actually be kind of enjoyable.
And as video viewers can already see, also joining us today is returning special guest, Dr. Jeremy Faust, who has been with us twice previously. When he decides to move past those smaller appearances he makes, like on CNN and NBC and stuff. And while you may recognize him from those types of shows where he discusses important medical matters, what has been happening to the country's health agencies, you can also often find him talking about Survivor on social media and popping in here. Other than that, he is an ER doctor in Boston and an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School. So again, welcome back, Jeremy. How have you been other than incredibly busy?
Well, it's great to be back, and thank you for having me. I am doing well. Things are busy. I know you asked, "Hey, do you have time to do this?" And my answer was, "No, but I'm gonna do it anyway." Because I
I
love
love
doing
that.
it. So I definitely did take a personal day today to prepare for this so that I would come in prepared, come in hot, and things have been good. I'm sorry, Jessica, about your winner pick. It was sad to see your winner pick mathematically eliminated when Jeff said, "Welcome to Survivor 48." But I will just say that my winner pick ain't doing so great. It's Cedric, who I think should win the anti-fishy for every episode that he's been featured in. I love this man, but my gosh, he's not playing great. So
No,
Yeah.
not definitely not. We didn't see much of Cedric this past episode, though.
yeah, that's
So
good news.
No, but we heard about him a little bit, which we'll get to
we did.
in a
Yes, we
bit.
did.
Did you pick him because he's a fellow doctor?
I did. I try to go for the doctors, and my sort of other winner pick, my sub winner pick would be Shaheen because he's very good friends with a friend of mine. So
Oh,
that's really exciting.
Oh.
So I'll get to at some point connect with Shaheen. Have not been able to do that yet.
did you know he was Beard Guy? If you don't want to reveal this, you don't have to. 2 seasons ago?
No, I did not know that. And he's been trying to convince our mutual friend to watch Survivor for years, and so finally now he's doing it.
Well, that's
Oh,
going
look
to
at that.
very great lengths just to convince someone to
Right.
watch Survivor.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Look at
So-
you and your strange little connections to Survivor world through friends of yours. It's very, very intriguing, I must
Yes,
say.
and speaking of which, last time we heard from you about another connection to the Survivor world
Mhm.
in the fact that you have met Sia. And so, I know the people out there need to know, do we have a Sia update from last time you were here?
Yeah, I think I've become the Sia whisperer.
Yeah.
That's all. And Sia, yeah, we've been in touch. She's doing very well. I will say I thought of this because the other day on Rob has a podcast on maybe Know It Alls or something. Rob said, "Sia, come back and watch the show again" or something. And the reality is, she is watching. She's still watching. She's still into it. I know that she was. We talked a bunch during last season, and she was really pulling for Kyle. She loved the whole family man thing of Kyle. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if I don't know how she felt at the end with some of his later stuff, but early on she was very much in the Kyle camp.
Mm.
And this season, I know she's seen up until maybe this last episode, but we hadn't really had a chance to chat. But no, she's doing great. She's got her baby. She's making music, and I hope to see her again. She's such a lovely human being.
Well,
Well,
that's
listen, if
great.
you are the Sia whisperer, you need to whisper to her things that they need to necessarily change
Yeah.
about Survivor. If we're allowed to pick things for season 50, maybe you can tell her and then she can tell the people that she knows and we can get the message to those who we need to get the message to.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay, good.
Or she can like do an appearance, do a song about it. Like
Something. I mean, she's definitely had a lot of influence over Survivor, and we know that. I mean, Jeff has recognized her and the effect that she's had on so many of the players. It
Mhm.
would be lovely if she could actually affect how the game is played. I mean, I'm just saying that would be
Yeah.
great. Come on, Sia,
or
help us out here.
have her come on with you as a second guest.
My
Oh
my
my
my real
God.
goal is like that if we do this again, that I get to do it from her house. That would
There
be
we
so
go.
like we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
I would die.
But if I come on, I think if I come on 4 times, there has to be the season of I have to have my own idol, like the Y blank lost of the island of the idols, because a 4-time repeater, that's very rare company.
I think we
It
can
is.
make this happen. I might know a guy who
Yeah.
could potentially hook you up with a couple more visits.
Yes.
I'm just
Thank you.
saying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, before we move on here, I do want to acknowledge what many of you told us, and rightly so. Yeah, we messed up our predictions last week.
Sorry.
We
Shocker.
forgot.
I was wrong.
Well, it wasn't you. It
something.
was all of us. All of
know.
us forgot that Bianca had lost her vote, even though we had talked about it earlier. Now, in my defense, it was a busy week. I had a wedding and everything else going on. In all of our defense, there's way too much to keep track of.
Yes.
But as it turned out, none of it mattered anyway. So, hey, what's the difference, right? So we forgot a
Right.
little bit.
I mean, so we messed up. It happens.
Yeah.
Just like
We were
like winner
actually
picks.
testing you to see who would point it out to us.
That's
Yeah.
exactly. That was it.
That's the
Mhm.
ticket. But hey, predictions are just a side thing we do. Our main focus is that each week we compare what the player who was voted out did in the game compared to my rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season 1 and have been updating ever since, using all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, and secret scenes. The newest published version of the rules can be found by going to our dedicated page at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed and clicking on the link bubble for the Survivor rules.
Mhm.
However, before we address how Thomas did in terms of the rules, we always have some other things to discuss from the episode. See, this is what happens when I compress my week and I'm discussing 2 people in the same week. Before the swap, we saw a bit of the aftermath of last week's tribal council, the Justin tribal council. I had said at the time that when Cedric implored Say and Mary to work together, it wasn't a great idea because doing so would mean they would work against him.
Right.
And they quickly realized that the next morning, as Say told us, we were worried about what the boys were going to do. But now Cedric has to worry about what the girls are going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It really, I know we talked about it a lot, but really that decision made no sense at the time. And then it was completely reaffirmed, that belief that was a bad decision once the girls came together and started chatting, which of course they're going to, because you asked them to, you implored them to, you said,
Yes.
please cut it. Well, they did. And
Yes.
that was not a good plan on Cedric's. I'm sorry. Jeremy isn't here. Winner pick. Oh my gosh.
Hey, listen, I don't think I've ever had a winner pick, so I have no. It's not quite as uncanny as yours, I don't think, 'cause I don't do them every year. But yeah, I'm not good at this. I will say, oh my goodness, when
Join the club.
well, yeah, when he said, "Oh, we have trust," I was like, "Oh, dude, no." And also, she was mad when she misused an idol, let alone writing the name down. I was just like, "Oh man, you are scorching your own earth, my friend."
Writing a name down
Twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem like the kind of person who's just gonna kind of forget that.
Well, she literally said in an earlier episode, I pretend that I don't hold a grudge, but I hold a grudge.
Oh
Yeah.
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 So-
she's not going to forget that anytime soon.
Yeah.
And with the swap being what it was,
Yes.
I know.
Well, before I give you my thoughts on the swap, I do want to emphasize something else that I've been talking about since like episode 1, episode 2, that Say does have a good social game. We kept hearing early on, no, she doesn't. She has no social game. Because Mary talked about how she could tell when Say was looking at her with game eyes compared to real life eyes, which are, quote, quite soft and trusting. And Mary recognized how it felt for Cedric to turn on Say, considering the relationship those two had, re-emphasizing what we said last week about it being an emotional decision on his part.
Yeah.
Now, of course, he was saved by the swap, but that might only be temporary. I really thought Say would put aside his betrayal when they were in the swap tribe as the only two, from Vula. But as soon as Bianca offered to work with the two of them, Say was very honest about how Bianca would want to get a vibe check with him, which Bianca immediately knew there was a crack there. Now, meanwhile, for her part, Bianca did a good job of pretending to be the swing vote while hiding the fact that she didn't have a vote to swing. And then, Say wants to work with her, especially since Say believes Cedric is making his own arrangements. But it's not a great position, especially since Cedric's arrangements include Say in an effort to target Bianca, knowing that she either has no vote or an extra vote.
All very convoluted now at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now the funniest part of it all was, I think, Jeremy, you were referencing this earlier, when Cedric said, what Say and I have is loyalty, as the edit cuts immediately to Say not being loyal to him at all with very good reason.
I do love, too, that in one of the conversations that Mary and Say were having, Mary even brought up the father aspect to Say, which I just thought was so lovely, that she was just kind of reminding her of that and just kind of planting that even further. Like, oh, but he's like a father to you. So I was really kind of surprised that he would do something like that. It's just such great gameplay because it's so subtle.
Dig it in there. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I just thought that was lovely. That was just so good.
And I think that we've seen some people butt heads in the past, and I've always thought, wouldn't it be great if they actually did kind of work it out and become a power couple? Like, I can't think of whatever, Saul and Rome coming together and going all the way together.
Right,
Or people
yeah.
who really just could not work together. But these two, maybe Say has enough of a social game and Mary is flexible enough that this could work.
Yeah, it certainly could.
Yeah, as long as both of them make it to the merge, I think it will work. I think these two could go far together. So now over at the other swap tribe that didn't have to worry about tribal council, because I can't keep track of what their names are. So it's the other one, it was a battle of people offering up players from their original tribe for sacrifice. Eva offered Star on a platter to everyone as soon as Star walked away from the rest of them. Eva told them everything. And then later, David did the same thing, offering up Charity after she told the others about how the two of them were so solid. And now, mind you, to her, solid meant she would tell him what to do and he'd do it. Quote, he's Mr. Loyal. You just have to tell him at the last minute. He's not very strategic, but he's a great shield, she said. Now, she might believe it, but David told Eva that Charity played way too hard and nobody on her original tribe trusted her. But she had no idea about this. So again, another person just offered up on a platter. If this tribe goes to tribal council, it won't be a fight to see who's protected. It'll be a fight to see who they can push out.
Yeah. I do think it's amazing too at how quickly people are becoming comfortable with each other, right? I think, like, I thought Say's response to Mary was interesting, where she's like, well, I think you should probably like feel him out a little bit, which I was like, oh, is that like pushing her away, saying I don't really want
Bianca,
or to Bianca, right? That it was like, maybe you should check in with Cedric. which was like a complete opposite of what we saw so many others doing, where they literally were like, oh, do you want all the tea right now? The minute we sit down, before we even say hi, this is who I am and this is what I do. It's let me tell you everything about the tribe. It's like, this is a game where knowledge is power. So sometimes you might want to just hold a little bit back. You can share some, but unless you're pulling off what Kamilla pulled off, like maybe just not say so much, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I thought that the way Bianca handled that was so great because rather than saying, "Where's the crack?" and people get all defensive, she said,
mhm,
"Yeah, I'd love to work with you." And
right.
that was and then what she got was, "Well, I'm not sure you wanna work with Cedric." And she's like, "Crack discovered."
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
it was a really nice way to ask, "Where's the crack?" Because people get very defensive when people sense that that's what's being fished for.
Right.
So this was really slick on Bianca's part.
It definitely was,
Yeah.
yeah, which is not what we saw happen with the, uh, is it
Eva
oh,
and
the new Vula. The new Vula did not do that. They were very much like, "So what's the deal with you 2? Like, are you guys working together?
Yeah.
Like, like, are you close?" It was immediate, like, "We're going to ask you very pointed questions and expect you to give us very pointed answers," which they did.
they did great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, besides what we've already talked about, do either of you have anything else or anyone else that you want to discuss before we get to the rules?
I always find it fascinating how swaps work out, right? Like
Mhm.
it's always quite incredible to me, the just all of the permutations that are possible, and then to see what happened in this particular swap, you're suddenly like, wow, this is fantastic for certain people, and then it's not. And so it's like, it's just always incredible to just watch how those things end up happening. It's because it's very random, and then to have certain people end up together the way that they did.
Mhm.
I was quite surprised in this particular episode with this swap, with the groups that ended up staying together. The people that were already close and working together ended up staying together.
Actually, this is related to what I wanted to say, which is that production's influence on the game is outsized in a moment like this because you have two tribes that have essentially played perfectly. They have 6 members left. So we actually have a swap here where one of those tribes is now in the minority, having done everything right. They went on
Mm-hmm.
their journeys, they won the thing at the journey, they won their competitions, they lost nobody, and now just by luck of the draw by 5, 5, and 5, they're in the minority, and on top of that, if you'd added in the other way, which was, oh, people didn't have their votes or whatnot, this can really impact the game, and what I
Mm-hmm.
think trying to convince, like, Jeff and production to change this is that is it fun, right? That's the whole Mike White thing, like, is it fun?
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm.
what I think is not fun is that these little manipulations are as valuable as winning challenges. And they should really realize that challenges are a big deal. It's the teamwork, it's
Mm-hmm.
having good shelter so you slept, it's hunting, getting food or whatever, fish. And so they're actually devaluing all the things that make Survivor Survivor by having these swaps happen when they do with all these advantages.
Mm.
Yes, but the one counter I would have, is it fun to see the same tribe lose over and over again and dwindle down to nothing? Um, especially when, you talk, I mean, production put the initial tribes together. It wasn't just perfect play on the other two tribes. It was I believe Stephanie posted something from
Mhm.
her notes from her Ponderosa pregame Ponderosa notes from the day of the marooning. So their first time they're all dressed in their colors. So she knows who is going to be on her
Mm,
tribe and the other tribes. And she posted to social media her notes, which basically said, I will be surprised if we win a single challenge. We are completely outmatched.
interesting.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Um,
Um,
fascinating.
I have a question about Ponderosa
mhm.
pregame, Jessica, which is I know people
Mhm.
talk about like you can't talk to each other, but how much do you see each other? How many days are you out there?
Mm. I think we were out there for probably 4 days, and you see each other every day, and you are so once you once you actually get to, when we got to Fiji, so we had to obviously travel to Fiji, they keep you separated on the plane. So you're not allowed to sit close to anyone on the plane. And they actually screwed up, which was so lovely for me, going to Fiji, because they initially had me sitting right next to someone and they had to move that person. So I had an extra empty seat next to me, which was super nice. So I was able to sleep much better. It's a very long flight. But then once you get out there, you are, and I'm assuming they still do the same thing. You sleep in tent city. Like, you each get a tent, so you have your own place to sleep, but you are eating together, you are hanging out together 24/7, literally. Like, I would equate it to a cafeteria. There's tables, so you might have to share a table with someone. Like, I sat across from Ken for an entire day and never spoke to him because you're not allowed to talk. So, like, we're literally sitting at the same table, like, he's like drawing pictures and I'm, doing whatever and reading, and like, no conversations. And
So weird.
it is very weird, but people are smiling and people are making eye contact.
Right. Like,
But yeah.
you know,
But
like,
if you get,
us, are we good?
if you get busted, they will say something to you. Like, if you are actually talking to each other, so they do stay on you and they make sure that you are not communicating with each other. And so it is a very, very weird place to be, because it's just so quiet. But then sometimes you can use I would like to call them keepers, to like pass information, because you talk to that person who you're allowed to talk to in hopes that, and I've said this before, and I know where I'm going off on a tangent, but this actually was one beautiful moment that did happen. Jeff came to visit us all and was talking to us at Ponderosa, going over some game mechanic things and whatnot. And we were very excited when he came in on a helicopter. We were like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And here comes Jeff. And then he like hung out there for the day. And I was in the pool with like a few other people were at the pool as well. And Jeff, for whatever reason, came over and started talking to me. And I was like, this is awesome. So I'm like talking to Jeff, and then all of a sudden he goes, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And then he walked away. So even he was like violating the rules. So I was like, so it is a very interesting atmosphere for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to just mention, just in terms of like this episode, is that it is fun, just despite what I said about the swaps being a little unfair. It is fun to see an idol played correctly, and that is really exciting and fun. And how they got there, I think, is going to be how we're going to talk through the rules and everything. But it was super fun just to see that play out. It was great Survivor. So I'm having a good time. I'm having a good time.
All right.
I appreciate your takeaway, Jeremy. I don't have a but like this one over here does about what you said. So I appreciate the takeaway.
All right. Well, there were, of course, other things going on. I'll be putting some of it on YouTube Shorts as at David Bloomberg. But before we get to how Thomas did, we want to mention that the rules we're about to discuss are available in a shorter and much more colorful version as a poster. Go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to the poster, click on it, and order it, and then our shipping department will get right on it.
That's right.
In addition to the poster, you can keep scrolling and get the poster on a t-shirt, or you can get the checklist on a t-shirt, or I should say, and you can get all of them.
Right.
So again, that is robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed for all your t-shirt, poster, and anything else needs. Well, Thomas was a fun player who had a lot of game left in him. He thought he'd put himself into such a good position that he didn't need to risk it by revealing and playing his vote steal advantage. He thought the odds were with him, both because Kyle and Kamilla were unlikely to have anything or work together, and also because he had two big threats ahead of him in his alliance. Why didn't things work out that way? What happened to make him the #1 target for Emmy Award winning actors Kyle and Kamilla? At RHAP, we know Survivor, and we know why Thomas lost. Now, the first and most important rule is to scheme and plot. And Thomas definitely knew that. He said early on that he could bond with pretty much anyone, and then proved it by forming the California Girls Alliance with Shaheen and Joe, along with having a separate true number one in Bianca, plus a decent relationship with Eva. He eventually even had something going with Star, though she had waited a long time to talk game with him. So she was definitely at the bottom of the tribe by then. Still, he could have worked with her if his original tribe had lost the challenge, and he decided to keep her around rather than Eva, or if he ended up on a swap tribe with her, because she didn't realize what he was really thinking at the time, as evidenced by some of her social media posts when she saw them talking about her on TV. uh, the point, though, is that he was working with literally everyone on his original tribe and probably would never have been a target there. Indeed, he didn't think he'd be a target anywhere, as he told Mike Bloom, something I know you'll appreciate, Jessica, as evidenced by the shirt that you're wearing today. He said, "I'm an old school hardcore alliance. Let's go to the effing end together kind of player. And I worked really hard to have the California girls feel like very much a safe alliance for me."
I love that approach so much. And I will say that loyalty is something that has dwindled in the world of Survivor. So I can appreciate the old school mentality with that. And I do think that he was in such a great place with the alliance he had formed. I can understand his hesitancy to want to mess that up, because that's the new era of Survivor, right? Where it's like you can have this alliance and suddenly it can be tossed out the next day and it doesn't matter. Whereas I feel in like old school alliance days, it was like you could have an alliance, there might be an issue, but you can still come back together because you realize, my goodness, we have to keep working together despite some issue that might have happened. So I really love that he was trying to just bring that back to life and make that part of his game. And he really was doing a great job in forming the bonds that were necessary to get to that point. Like I could actually see that happening. As he was saying that, I was thinking, yeah, I could certainly see that. I 100% could see that, because he really was. I love that he described himself as like the mailman. Everyone was coming to him with information, and it was certainly to his benefit because he was the one that everyone felt comfortable with. And so I do think that he could have gotten himself there, but for what ended up happening here, which is unfortunate. I love
Yeah.
Thomas.
Yeah, I think that he definitely schemed and plotted. First of all, I give him kudos. He named the California Girls Alliance, so that was very Nick Wilson of him to name it. He was the one who came up with that. And
I don't know that anybody wants to be told that it was very Nick Wilson.
Well, but I mean, just in terms of that gameplay,
Yes,
naming
yes.
things, I think that's fair. That's a piece of Survivor strategy that I think is worth thinking about.
Yes.
And look, scheming and plotting means being a good liar. I thought the way he rolled with that moment about being outed about the journey was very smooth. I was like, wow, that guy's a good liar. He said, well, why is Mitch telling the truth? I mean, it may not have, I mean, Shaheen didn't completely buy it. We'll find out later, but it was just, he was quick on the draw. I was kind of impressed. One thing that was interesting to me, though, is that we think about him being voted out, and we think about the fact that it was his 3 versus their 2 in this vote. Part of the job of surviving is, if it's going to be your 3, it not be you. And I'm kind of wondering why we think it is. He was the one who said, "I do not want to play with Kamilla. We should vote for her." If he'd gotten his way, the idol would have been misplayed. So now Kamilla did a great job, and I think I give all the credit to the 2 of them, Kyle and Kamilla. But in actuality, he wanted Kamilla, they wanted Kyle, and he didn't get his way. So I don't know. There's something about his game that we'll come to later where he didn't have the ability to move his troops.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think we can just say if he had gotten his way, it would have been a certain way, because I think then you have a butterfly effect. Like, do the others, do they open Kyle's bag and go through it in front of Kamilla if it turns out that they had agreed Kamilla was going to be the target? Like, does their behavior towards her change in a way that Kyle and Kamilla realize, oh, it's going to be Kamilla, not Kyle?
Right, right.
I had a question about that moment, which is going through the bag in front of Kamilla.
Mm-hmm.
Is
That
that
was
a
a terrible idea.
Is that a violation of one of these rules? And I don't know which one it is, because it feels like it's giving her information that, oh, look,
Yes.
you're with us. We're going for Kyle. That's part of them putting together who to use the idol on. And so
Yeah.
what rule are they violating here by going through the bag in front of her?
I mean, I would say it is probably the 7th rule, because it deals with idols and the like. It could also be a violation of the 2nd rule for scheming and plotting too much and failing to keep your scheming secret.
Well, and
so-
Thomas did point out the fact that we shouldn't have been doing that in front of Camilla, but that
he was the one who did it. He was the one who handed Shaheen.
Shaheen started it,
I
though.
watched this. It was Shaheen's idea, and then he handed the bag. Shaheen initiated it, and he was like, ooh, write a passage. Here you go. You do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
but all he had to do at that moment was say, "No, we don't do that," and it would have been
And
over.
I agree. Yes.
He encouraged the action.
Well, of
Aiding and
course,
abetting.
because he
Yes,
wanted to be a
yes.
little villainous, right?
Yes,
It was
exactly.
like, But
Yeah.
I do think that there is something else to think about as well. And this is just part of game mechanics that, so maybe rule 7 fits in here a little bit more. The walks that you hear everybody talk about. When I was on a walk, these are the only times that you know someone is not going to be in your space and suddenly be in your space because they've gone on a walk. So I guarantee when that happened,
On a walk means a confessional.
Yes, you are with production.
Mhm.
You are taken farther away so people can't hear what you're saying. And those are the moments that can be very detrimental to people's games because things happen when you're gone and conversations are had and bags are gone through. And so if you pay attention, and I've said this and I will continue to say it for as long as Survivor is playing, if you are out there, pay attention to who is being taken on walks and in what order and in what sequence and who's the last one they talk to. There's a method to their madness. And that's why these walks can certainly affect gameplay, because we've seen people say, I got voted out because I was the last one and plans were changed and suddenly I was not involved anymore because I wasn't present. So I would imagine that that's why they felt comfortable doing it in that moment, was because Kyle was on a walk. That's
By
my
the
guess.
way, is there only one walk at a time?
Normally, yes, because they have very limited, like they'll have one kind of crew with each tribe. And so there's usually a camera person, there's a sound person, there is the person who actually does the interview, but then they'll have an extra producer that's kind of there on the kind of keeping track of everything and everybody. So when you go on a walk, that person is staying and keeping track of everybody. So yeah, so I think that it's really going to be limited to just one at a time until the merge comes, and then all hell could break loose because then all of those teams are working together with everyone who's at the merge.
Yeah. Now, to round out more of rule 1 here, I do want to mention, Thomas, he had what would appear to be a dream swap tribe. I think, Jeremy, you were referencing this earlier, because his whole California Girls Alliance was together randomly, immediately forming a majority. But they were outsmarted and outschemed by Kamilla and Kyle. Now, we'll go over the exact details of all that when we get to Rule 7. But Kamilla and Kyle should definitely be in the running for an Emmy after those performances. And, while obviously they had to use an idol to get the vote flipped against Thomas, it wasn't just a trinket that won the day. It wasn't like magic that poof, it automatically happened. They had to work together first to get the idol originally, if we remember back to that. And then they had again to work together to pretend to not be working together and convince the California girls so they could use the idol in the best way possible. Because, they don't violate rules 2 and 7 with Kamilla,
right?
If they don't believe that the two are in opposition to one another, and this shows how players play the game. Yes, an idol was used, but it wasn't all about the trinkets, and that is why I say Thomas the schemer was out schemed in this department.
What I think is so incredible about what Kamilla and Kyle did is, and I thought that this should have been a bit of a red flag, but it wasn't. And Thomas had said, if I was there when Act 1 occurred, I think I would have seen it a little bit differently. But Kamilla literally threw Kyle under the bus while Kyle was like sitting right there, right? Like it wasn't like she was trying to be like, oh, just so you know, like we're not working together. I want you to know, like I'll join you all. So I don't know if that made it more believable, because she was like, no, I'm really not with this guy, even though he's sitting right there, and I'll tell you to his, like, in front of him, I'll say it. But I just thought that was really quite fascinating that she like chose that moment, and Kyle's response to it was not like, oh snap, what's happening? He was like, I see what she's doing, and went along with it and played along with it. So really thinking on his feet in that moment, as was she. But I just thought it was fascinating that was the choice, that I'm going to do this in front of him. And then he responded in kind. It was really quite incredible that it worked out the way that it did, because it could have come off very badly, and it didn't.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of it is they asked in front of everyone except for Thomas. Now, I know Thomas said, oh, if I were there, I would have caught on to it, but there's no way of knowing that. Hindsight is 2020, and he's only seeing what he sees on the TV now, not what happened in, actually in person. And so maybe he would have caught on to it, maybe not. It's impossible to say.
Sure.
So yeah. But we can move on to the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Now, as I just mentioned, Thomas was indeed a schemer. And he was a good one, both on the show and for us to have fun watching. But he did overdo it and make it a bit obvious sometimes. The clearest example of this was when he told Shaheen that maybe Stars Beware Advantage clue just disappears. And Shaheen told us it was, quote, a level of gameplay that now scares me a little bit about Thomas. That is way too hard a gameplay. Now, Thomas said in his interviews that Shaheen wasn't really bothered by this in the grand scheme of things. At the time, I thought it was foreshadowing that Shaheen would eventually turn on Thomas. Now, knowing what happened, I think it was just an easy way for Survivor production to show the audience, hey, look at this scene. It shows this guy is gaming really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really have much to say about it. I think, well, here's the thing. I think Thomas was great. And I do think that Thomas tried to take things in a different direction. And I think by stirring the pot was one of the things that he was hoping to do. And maybe at times he was stirring the pot too much and causing, too many people to respond, as we saw Shaheen respond in that way. But I mean, I think overall he was attempting to do things in the game that were certainly to his benefit, but could have rubbed people the wrong way and hurt him in the end, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he was seen as a schemer, I think, did play a role in terms of him being chosen. Kyle and Kamilla were debating who to target. And Kyle said Shaheen is the sneakiest, but Thomas was almost as sneaky. Now, personally, I would say that he was way sneakier. You might say he is sneaky. So, yeah, that definitely played a role in them choosing him as their target once the idol was played.
Yeah,
I think it was more about the journey.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this, and it has to do with the journey.
Okay, well, we can get to that.
But it is part of scheming, because it's about this thing that I've said before, which is that I don't think you should lie about things you don't have to lie about. And I know that we have yet another lawyer saying that he's not a lawyer because you're not allowed to be a lawyer on Survivor. But apparently you can be a colorectal surgeon. That's okay. So I don't know what that means. But lying,
it means that it's really hard. They saw Josh try to make excuses for what he had he had done during that whole time of med school and everything else and fail at it so miserably. So now doctors are afraid to lie.
I think it's just like Jessica can tell us, you're out there, you're hungry. It's hard to keep track of everything. The less lying you have to do, the better. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that lying about he made some tiny lie about some aspect of his job, I think. But the bigger one here
Mhm.
was lying about what happened on the journey. And we've talked a lot about you should keep your idols a secret if you can. But journeys are different. And this is a kind of a meta point that I wanted to make today. And that is that journeys are always going to be fact checked, because at some point
Yes.
there's going to be a
Yes.
swap or in this wonderful thing with Star and Kamilla at the challenge. This is a FAFO. Are we allowed to say that? F around and F
You-
around and find out. That's going to happen in journeys from this day forward. And so I think
Yeah.
that not telling people in your alliance the truth can hurt. And
Mm-hmm.
it did here, because what happened was he told them something that wasn't true. Kamilla brought that to them later, and it may not have necessarily caused them to turn on their own boy. But what it did was it made them say, oh, Kamilla's someone who's at least trying to work with us. Like, we kind of
Mhm.
think she's interesting. I think that his lying about the journey butterflied towards the other two wanting to vote for Kyle, and Kyle and Kamilla picking that up. So I actually think that lying about the advantage and also not using it was actually a really big part of why he didn't make it out of this tribal.
I think that that's probably a huge part of it, because the journey was mentioned, that was one of the things that they were looking at, that he was the one who went on the journey and that she was sharing information about that with Shaheen and with Joe. But then also the other part of the not sharing that information put Thomas in a difficult spot, because he didn't then want to have his girls find out, that he had been lying to them. And
Right.
so it put him in a very, very difficult point, because he all of a sudden Kamilla is saying these things and he's like, well, Mitch is lying, but he's like, but I don't want them to know that I was lying to them. And he could have avoided all of that if he had just said, hey, now I am a proponent of keeping secrets 100%, but I do think that this is one of those types of secrets you can't necessarily keep, because 3 people know about it. And so that at some point the truth is going to come out. It's not like finding an idol on your own and you keep that a secret. If you find an advantage on your own, you keep that a secret. But what happens on a journey, 2 other people know. And so, yes, you can fact check it. So I completely agree that in that particular instance, as much as I appreciate him wanting to keep a secret, he knows that it's going to be fact checked, because he talked about Bianca, who had everything told him everything about her journey. So yes, I think that is a very significant point here as well.
Yeah, Kyle said, actually, I have a little quote here. When you think about the advantages in the game, let's take stock. Thomas went on a journey. So in my mind, either he's got no vote or some kind of advantage. The reason they chose Thomas was the journey. And then to your point, what you just said, then he can't actually take advantage of this incredibly powerful steal a vote in this situation, because he feels that by doing that, he will jeopardize his alliance. Well, easy answer. Don't violate Rule 2. Don't over scheme and plot. Tell the truth to your alliance members.
I mean, that's easy to say in 2020 hindsight. So to defend Thomas a little bit, I do understand the reasons he gave for not wanting to reveal his advantage, because he was thinking of his long-term game. And yes, it is easy to say he should have told those 2 sooner because they were his tight allies. But basically, half of his original tribe was one of his tight allies. So it would have been like telling everyone but Eva and Star. And then if he told Joe would have told Eva. So it would have been telling everyone but Star. And we always lament people giving away information. Just last week,
for sure.
Just last week, I mentioned how Rob said on Know It Alls, don't tell your ally if you have something good, but do tell them if it's something bad. So I get why he didn't say anything at the time. But you are absolutely right. He should have known his lie could come back to bite him when other people from other tribes compared notes. And, I know he hasn't met Mitch, but seriously, whose word are we going to take? Mr. Sneaky Schemy or Mitch, the most honest guy out there? the nicest guy out there, potentially, maybe competing with Joe on that one. So yeah,
like a little preview, I'll talk about this later, but I
Mhm.
think that maybe to thread this needle, he should have, maybe you're right, like not told them until the swap. But at the swap, be like,
Yes.
hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Now that we're here,
Yes.
here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna end this war today because I've got this extra thing, and I'll say when we get to Rule 7 a little bit of why that's true. But I think that maybe at the swap, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
now that we're away from those others, here we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say too, is especially after his story was compromised, which is something that
Yeah.
Rob and Steven discussed. Once Joe and Shaheen told him what Kamilla had said, he could have easily said, well, I was trying to keep it a secret when we were on that other tribe, but now that it's just us,
Mhm.
yeah, now we can talk about it.
Right.
And plus he knew Kamilla could have had an advantage because she had been on a journey.
Mhm.
And of course, there's always the possibility of a shot in the dark, which a vote steal takes away. So, yes, there were many reasons for him to do it now.
Yeah. And I think if anything, if doing it now, if you are worried about long-term game, if you don't get there, there is no long-term game. So it is a matter of like, I need to fix this while I still can and try to save face with the people I've been playing this game with. And are they going to show me more loyalty than the 2 new people who have just joined us? And if he can use it as an opportunity to remind them, Kamilla went on a journey too. So she's probably got something. So
Right.
that's something we have to think about. And so you can shine the light on her a little bit instead of it necessarily just being on you and then being accusatory, like, oh, well, we're being told you lied about this. So it's like nip it in the bud before it even becomes a problem. The swap happens, you're back together, and that's when you just have to say, hey, this is where we're at and this is what's happening. And then we deal with it later. Like we can fix this, we can hopefully mend it. Because yes, I do think that was a huge part of why Thomas ended up becoming the focal point of this vote.
Yeah. All right. Well, the third rule tells players to be flexible. Jeremy, how do you think Thomas did in this rule?
First of all, Thomas said you have to be ready for any curveball that comes your way. He certainly talked the talk. He said you can't be complacent because that was literally the last thing that was said before Jeff said drop your buffs.
Mm-hmm.
So he certainly knew that. And I think that he exhibited some signs of following this rule pretty well. And then there's just one where I don't think he did. The way that I thought that he was flexible, first of all, was multiple alliances. He has a number 1 in Bianca, and we almost forget that fact because of how solid that other alliance is. So he had multiple paths. I thought that it was interesting that he said he thought he would play with women, but the cards dealt a different deck, and he made the California Girls Alliance. So he just named them girls, even though they were a bunch of burly dudes. So that showed flexibility. And I thought the way he handled the whole star idol thing showed a lot of nuance and flexibility. Star revealed that she had this thing, and Thomas is like, great, awesome, let's use it. And he actually even floats the idea of using the extra to using that idol to end a face-off that could be Star and him,
Right.
against the others. I thought that was, I'm not sure he would do that, but it showed that he was really thinking more than just old school, like, I know one thing and that's my alliance and that's all I'm going to do. Now, I'm a big believer of when I play the game someday, hopefully, I don't know, that I will be a reliable alliance partner at this phase of the game. But I also think that it shows flexibility. The one place where I think that flexibility would have been good was he decided, I'm not going to tell anyone about this advantage. And I think that, again, if he had kind of shook himself out of that complacency, that decision that we call it in medicine, the pre-diagnostic, early diagnostic closure, deciding too soon when you shouldn't, keeping an open mind, it could be something else. And then I think he might have ended up surviving.
Yeah, I mean, we talked in the first rule about how he would have been able to work with anyone else on his original tribe. And when he was asked in interviews how a vote would have gone if they'd lost, he couldn't even answer for sure because he had different options in place depending on how things might have gone at that moment. They might have voted out Star, they might have voted out Eva. It just depended. And the thing was, he had the ability to do either because of his flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do love that he was locked into this idea of loyalty, but he was also willing to make that loyalty a little bit more. I can go this way with it, or I can go that way with it, but it still felt like it was loyalty. So I love that he was able to find that balance and give himself so many options.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the fourth rule tells players not to let their emotions control them. Jessica, what do you think of Thomas for this one?
I think he was great in this particular rule. I mean, if anyone, he was playing with other people's emotions, which I always find to be really quite entertaining. But yeah, he was always very, I don't want to necessarily say matter of fact in his thinking, but it was very game oriented. He would look at the circumstances and what decision do I need to make relative to my long-term game, as opposed to just how I'm feeling in this particular moment. So I think he did a great job in finding that balance and not letting his emotions control him, but really making it about what was best for his game, whether it be loyalty to this person, loyalty to that person, doing something sneaky over here to this person, but it was always about the game. It was never about anything but his desire to make it further in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely don't think he made decisions based on emotion. He wouldn't have if they had voted in the original tribe, and he didn't this time when it came down to it. He was in game mode.
I have a question about this, or maybe it's an answer. I don't know. Uh, he said that he would wait until tribal to decide whether to use a steal a vote. And he said, if something freaky deaky is happening, I might use my steal a
Yeah.
vote. And I don't know if that is violating this rule of sort of emotions. Like, is reading tribal council being emotional, because that's like reading reading the moment. I actually think that you should not ever wait until tribal council to decide what to do, because tribal council is a performance. It's not a tribal council. And you shouldn't read the room. You should know your plan, because again, these are pros. They're going to go there and they're going to put a performance on so that everything goes the way their plan should be. So I think that by waiting till tribal, that was almost kind of, it's ironically, it's either a scheming and plotting related thing, or it's an emotional thing. But I didn't like that that's how he said he was going to decide.
Yeah, I would say he had pretty much decided
Not to. Yeah.
And so something really freaky would have had to happen, like, Joe standing up and saying, I'm siding with Kyle and Kamilla, or
Right.
something like that. And I think that's also the same, to the rest of what you said when it comes to idols. You can go in with a plan not to play your idol unless something weird happens. And then sometimes people slip and weird things do happen.
Or someone plays an idol or an advantage
Right.
and you realize I better do mine too. That
Right.
makes sense.
Right,
That
right.
I think that's, if he meant that, then that's fine. The other thing is, I will come back to this later, and maybe I'm just nitpicking, but in his final confessional, he said, I was scared to be myself. And that's in a way an emotional distance. He let something that he was afraid of about himself get in the way of an ultimately tight, close bond with these alliance members. And I think that led to lies, which led to targeting. So I think there's something about Thomas that he's not 100% comfortable in his skin. Kind of gave me shades of baby Andy, like not quite knowing who he is, but saying he does. And I really like Thomas. I think that he probably does know who he is, but but there was something about this environment. Like, he waited, by the way, on the mat. Like, he waited to tell his story. He's like, I'm gonna just wait until everyone says who they are before I say what I am. And that's really smart. But I also think there was a little bit of a guard on Thomas. Like, he didn't let everyone in. And I think that down like seven, butterfly effect is part of why he got voted out.
Yeah. All right. Well, the fifth rule reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. And even as schemy as Thomas was, I do think, and even, holding back, like you said, I do think he came across as friendly. He seemed to have good relationships with everyone on a social level. I think he's the type of guy who would be a lot of fun to have out there, in Fiji, passing the hours. However, I do wonder if, compared to Shaheen, this was one part of a reason that he was targeted because he told Mike Bloom that Shaheen is like a puppy dog and you love him even if you know you can't trust him.
Yeah, I think that Thomas is the kind of person, and I've said this since we first met Thomas. I want to hang out with him. I want to spend time with him. I want to gossip and do all of the things with Thomas because I think he just has that thing about him that makes you want to talk with him. And this is why I feel like Jeremy, I don't know if he was necessarily holding back. I think Thomas understands that he is that kind of person, that he has a personality that is vibrant and can be noticed and kind of stands out a bit. And so he wants to suck in the information from everybody else and then use that to his advantage, right? And so I mean I don't think he's someone who was like, I want to go on Survivor and be in the trees and survive. No, he wants to go and like play the social aspect of this game, I think more so than most people do. And it's something that I think he's just really good at. And he actually said that his like biggest superpower and his kryptonite is that he really does love people and he has a tendency to make people feel like we are closer than we actually are. And so this is where his strong suit really comes in, right? Is forming these relationships and these bonds, making people feel like they matter, which is why he was the mail carrier, right? Everyone's coming to him with all of the information. And so I do really think that he was able to find that component of himself to not let that part of him take over, but instead use it to play the game better. So I think he's probably one of those people that everybody wanted to play this game with at some point when they met him, when they were at Ponderosa with him, when they were just watching, when they were actually meeting him. He just seems to have this thing about him that really I do think is a superpower. And unfortunately, also probably one of the reasons why he was being targeted too.
I would just add to that I think, yeah, I look, I was drawn to him too. He seems like somebody I'd be work buddies with. I don't know if he's in music, but just like a person who you could like shoot the breeze with and sort of like roll your eyes at the world. There's something about him that makes me feel like he'd be someone just fun to like just talk to and hang with. And as you said, I think there's another side of him too, though, which he did a really good job in this rule of pretending to be nice. There is a cutthroat side of him. There is the side of him that says, "Ooh, let's hide Star's idol clue." Ooh, I think he'll cut a person. I think he's got a nasty streak, and he actually did a really good job of subverting that. Like if you're in the dominant alliance, 3 versus 2, there have been prior Survivor players who've been like, sorry, but we're in the majority, you're in the minority, beg to me. And like, I think he has evil genius a little bit in him, but he completely downplayed it. He was like, oh no, he actually said like, we didn't come here to break each other's dreams. We came here to play, but we did not come here to kill each other's dreams. At Tribal. And also like other little things where like, he's like, oh my gosh, like this bracelet that Eva gave to Joe, like, ugh. But he didn't let on. He totally pretended to be nice. He was just, isn't that nice? So I kind of felt like he has a little bit of an edge there that that was going to really like serve him later in the game, and that he did a really good job of keeping that under wraps.
Yeah. He pretty much, just to pull this up, if you look at the picture for Rule 5, it is Boston Rob talking crap to the camera, but not to other people. And that's the perfect representation of what Thomas did. He gave his evil laugh, and talked about the bracelet and all those other things to the camera where it belonged.
Yeah. I love him.
So the 6th rule warns against being too much of a threat, and Thomas thought he had this ground covered. Within the California Girls Alliance, he had set himself up as, in his words to Dalton Ross, the smallest target of the 3 of us. And he added, "This is my perfect alliance. You're going to go after big threat Joe or huge personality threat Shaheen." But he also, acknowledged that he underestimated himself and the threat he posed. And I would agree with that. We've talked about him being seen as a schemer, and that clearly played into the decision to target him. Someone who could lie the way he did about the journey and clearly fool his own closest allies was a person to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think his biggest like threat component came from the fact that he had so many options too, right? Like you've already talked about Jeremy, how he was like, I can go this way or I can go that way as far as who my alliance partners necessarily could be. And I think that in and of itself can make somebody that much more threatening, because they're not just hanging with you, they're hanging with this person over here too, and they're hanging with that person. And everyone wants to get to the end with their little perfect match of people. And if he has the most matches, then he's more likely to be sitting there in the end. So I do think that he was someone that was definitely going to be noticed as a threat in that way as well.
Kyle said that another reason why he was a big threat was this almost as sneaky as Shaheen, but the journey was a big thing. And I think when you go on a journey and then you swap tribes, you have to know my rule, which is the players are professionals. They know you went on a journey. And so you are, of the three of them, the person with the most likelihood of having something dangerous that needs to be dealt with. And so I think Thomas should have known that his threat level was really perceived as high because of the journey, and Kamilla was all over it, right? And he knew that she was all over that, which is what will lead into what I hope will not be too long of a diatribe when we get to the next rule about why he needed to play his advantage at this tribal. But I think that going on a journey is a kind of a threat level, and you need to either mitigate it or address or use it to your strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go to the seventh rule, which covers idols and advantages in game mechanics. And Jeremy, I know you have some thoughts about the various possibilities here. Now, I do want to mention, because I don't think we mentioned this while we were recording, that although it wasn't shown on TV, a couple people like Dalton Ross and Tyson did some digging and found out that Kyle did indeed use the extra vote. I don't know why they didn't show it at the end during Thomas's final words. Normally they show all the votes. They didn't show Kyle holding up 2 votes. I don't understand why. But Dalton said when he dug into it, he found out it will all be explained next week. But I like I said, I don't understand why you don't just show it and let the explanation speak for itself. But
So
whatever.
do we even know who he voted for in the extra vote?
It must have been for Thomas, because otherwise the vote would have been shown.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, with that in mind, Jeremy, take it away.
Okay, so rule 7 is idols, trinkets, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to zoom out here and just say that the real thing that's happening here in this season right now is a brewing war between Lagi and Siva. Those are the 2 6-person tribes going into this. And we sense that that is what's going to be the clash of the titans. And I think that the misread is that clash really comes to fruition at the merge, when in fact it was here. And they needed to know that if anything, if Kyle and Kamilla had anything, which they likely did because at least of one journey, this was the moment to end the war. And they could end it definitively with one move, and that is a steal a vote. If Thomas uses the steal a vote, it functions as an idol nullifier in this condition. And that is because he takes a vote away. Now there's 4 on the other side. They can go 2 on 2, 3 on 1. Either way, the most number of votes that can go the other direction is 1, and they've won the war. It's over. And so I think this idea of waiting to have the war once you're on the pre-merge or mergatory is the huge mistake. And when you have an advantage in a 5-person tribe, you've got to use it, because you know the 2 are coming for you, especially when they know that you might have been lying. So I really feel like him not playing this was a massive, massive mistake, because it would end the war or at least they'd have a 6-5 advantage as opposed to the other way around.
Right.
There's a couple of various conditions we can talk about, whether like if they play the extra vote, what happens here and there.
Mhm.
But it doesn't matter, because with a steal a vote on 3-on-2, it's literally over.
Mhm.
Well, okay, I don't think it quite is, but before we get to that, yeah, without him playing it, it's easier for Kyle and Kamilla to lock themselves into a win in this tribal council. They either do what they did here, they pile all on, they get it right, or if they end up being wrong about who the California girls' target is, it ends up tying 3-3.
Exactly.
And if neither Joe nor Shaheen are willing to flip, it would leave them in a tiebreaker because both Kamilla and Kyle would be safe. One because of the idol, one because they're the target in the tie. So it would be a rock draw between the other two California girls. Lose-lose for them there. If he had played the vote steal, things become more complicated because Kyle and Kamilla have to think on their feet and without much food and without much sleep. If Thomas plays the steal on one of them, this happens before voting. So if he decides to go after Kamilla, Kyle holds on to the idol and the extra vote, so he's safe and he has 2 votes. If they use the vote steal on Kyle, he then passes the idol and extra vote to Kamilla. Now, I would not think that the California girls would play the steal unless they were planning to split the votes 2-2.
Yeah.
So that would mean at the end of voting, each side is tied at 2. And we go back to the situation that we had earlier. Because 2 would go on someone who had the idol, 2 would go on the other person, and 2 would go on Thomas. But if, let's say, they did vote steal on Kyle and he had to pass those things along, they could realize what's happening. There's no time in tribal council to try and make it sneaky.
Yeah.
You're like, he's not going to go up and give Kamilla a hug and stuff it in her pocket or something like that.
Like, which hand is it in? Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah. In this case, it would have been both hands. And so they might then realize what was happening and change things up so that Kyle and Kamilla could not guarantee a win. So like they might have split the vote 3-1 instead of 2-2 because they didn't know about the extra vote, which would also screw up the situation for Kyle and Kamilla if they did the 3-1 on the right person. And so it would all depend on people thinking through everything on the fly, which we know can be hampered through lack of food and sleep. Here we're recording this 2 days after seeing it. I'm still not convinced that someone isn't going to write on social media and say, hey, David, you forgot this, or that one of you two are going to point it out now. There was discussion on various social media, on various podcasts. Well, if we did this, then this. If we did this, then this. And I haven't had time to listen to all of the podcasts. And I know some of them go through every possibility. But this was what, I wrote down, a day after it happened on full food and sleep. So
I have a theory though. And
Okay.
maybe I'm completely wrong about this, and please tell me, universe, if I am. But I
They
do
will.
not think they will. I know they will. But I do not think that he would. If you do the steal a vote, I don't think that Kyle at that moment is allowed to pass that extra vote back to Kamilla. I don't think he can. I think the only thing that he could do is play. I don't know if he could pass anything to her at that point.
Okay,
Like,
so
I'm
not going to wait for the universe to tell you. I'm going to tell you, yes, they can. You can pass things in, because they haven't gotten up to vote yet. So you can pass things in tribal council whenever you want until it's time to vote. At that point, then it becomes too late.
I feel like this steal a vote thing it's fascinating because I don't know. To me that again, it's too many advantages and there's too many things to try to keep track.
But at the end, sorry.
It's all right. Go ahead.
At the end, if he plays the steal a vote, they have 4 votes on their side. if that means that Kyle and Kamilla either have 1 vote or 2 votes left. Either way, it's 4 against 1 or 4 against 2. It's pretty much over as far as I could tell. So, to me, that's the big thing here, is that they thought because they were 3-2, they didn't have to burn an advantage. Like, no, a 1-person margin is a perfect place to use it. Like, because you're not going to have, you might have another advantage place, but you'll know about most of them. And it's not going to be like at the merge where you could have advantage Armageddon. Yeah.
But 4-2 isn't over, because that's what I was saying. If you split it, it
Yeah.
becomes 2-2-2. And if one of those twos has an idol, then it becomes 2-2.
It
Oh
depends, yeah.
no.
It's close. I think we have to math it out. But anyway,
See,
So
now,
wait, if
see,
it
no,
becomes-
Bloomberg's
I think
figuring
that there's leftover votes and they still lose.
Because
David,
the steal, okay, hold on. This was what I was saying. See, this was exactly what I was saying, that I didn't. Yeah, because it doesn't cancel 2 votes the second time through.
right.
It cancels 2 votes the first time, but then the steal a vote carries over. So so Thomas would have gotten 2 votes. Well, no, I'm sorry. What I remember seeing online, I think that Stephen had said the steal a vote belongs to whoever it originally belonged to in terms of whether it could be played. So let's say he stole it from Kyle, and then Kyle was one of the people in the tie. So let's say that Kamilla used the idol and Kyle was one of the people in the tie. Kyle loses his vote at that point, and
Yeah.
therefore there is no vote to be stolen. But then it's still 3-1. So I
2
think it
plus
does
2
still work.
plus
I think you're
1
right.
plus 2.
wait, I'm right. I was
think
right?
you are. I think
my
I
God.
think he is right.
I've waited for David to say I was right. I don't care if I am at this point.
Jeremy, you're right.
I don't care if I'm not right. I like that David thinks I'm right. Let's stop right now.
Yeah.
We'll just stop right now. I do, because
See, this is what I mean. I mean, this is
Yes, there's
trying
so,
to
and this
Too
is
much
what
tequila,
out.
David. Too much tequila. I'm just telling you. The wedding was
Oh wait, no, it won't be. It won't be 3, because Thomas will also lose his vote, because he'll be one of the tied people. So it'll be, well, but it'll still be 2-1.
All right. We need Channing, guys. We need Christian Huber.
Okay,
This
we got to move on.
But I will say this. I want to quote Thomas as saying, I don't know what's going to happen with idols and advantages and all those things. So I want to be safe. And I think that Kamilla and Kyle are going to try to stick together. Ooh, good read. And put 2 votes on me. Good read. So do I bring a steal a vote into it and try to save my own butt? Then he says, the downside to doing that is that I haven't told my alliance members about my advantage. If I'm going to do it, it's because I'm feeling something freaky deaky is going on. I have to whip it out and save myself. He admits that the reason he doesn't do this is because of the lie he told earlier. And I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah. And so, earlier we talked about Thomas being out-schemed by Kamilla and Kyle, but here it could be argued that he out-schemed himself.
Yeah.
I mean, if he had knowledge of everything that was going on, certainly he would have played it. He was playing the odds without fully taking into account what those odds might be. One of the two could have an idol. He mentioned in one interview that the chance was 1 in 6, but he was only talking about Kyle. There were 2 of them.
Exactly.
That brought it up to 1 in 3, which are pretty significant odds. Plus, as we've discussed, he knew Kamilla had gone on a journey, so she might have had something as well. And of course, there is the 1 in 6 chance of a shot in the dark, even without any of that. And I mean, yeah, he didn't know he would be the target, but he did know that Kamilla tried to poison the others against him by bringing up his lie about the journey. So that should have been a bit of a hint. And yeah, he was there when Shaheen searched Kyle's bag, but he also said in interviews that he knew if it were him, he wouldn't have hid it in the bag anyway. He didn't have his steal vote in the bag. And by doing it in front of Kamilla, they basically gave away that they would be targeting Kyle. We discussed that earlier.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot going on here, but I do think in the end, unless there's a scenario I'm missing, which is possible at this point, you use the steal a vote correctly, and I think it eliminates just about all the possibilities, if not all the possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Jeremy, you knocked this one out of the park.
I'm glad because I took a day off from doing actual work to think about this. And if I'm
I love
wrong,
that.
if I'm wrong, it was still fun.
Yes. Now,
Well,
as-
and it is fascinating just because this is why the advantages make me insane, because there are so many permutations and so many things that we spend time doing this, and you said we still could be wrong. Like, and so yes, to be in that situation where you're sitting there hungry, tired, can't think straight, and you're just all of these concerns you have going through your head. I don't want my alliance to be mad at me and all of these other things. Yeah, I mean, it makes it very, very difficult. It's really, really hard to figure out in that moment. Trust me, I've been there. It's not fun. But you did say, Jeremy, he very clearly had it all kind of mapped out in his head before he went into tribal. So it wasn't all of a sudden this was a shock and, oh gosh, I have to think on my feet. He had figured it out before he got there.
Yeah.
Now, as a side note to all this, there was one other instance of Idol's advantages, etc., and that is how he dealt with Stars Beware advantage. He said in interviews that he and others had figured out the code to unlock her idol, but while people like Shaheen were saying, "Oh, okay, we can do that," he pushed back against actually doing it because they hadn't decided if they wanted to vote her out. So why would they give their target an idol? As far as we know, they kept it closed as of the swap. I did not go back over every interview. I did notice as I was kind of summarizing the quotes that I had taken out, in those quotes, he doesn't actually say we kept it locked. He said, I advocated, I pushed back against the idea of opening. So would it surprise me if we get a flashback later of someone telling her the code, whether beforehand or even they show up at the swap and Jeff says, drop your buffs? Maybe Shaheen leans over and says, the code is this, and just as it's happening.
Well, I loved Gordon Holmes' suggestion of unlocking it, taking the idol out and filling it with something else and then relocking it and giving it back to her. That'd be really sneaky, but I kind of enjoy that idea.
They could stick Eva's bracelet in there.
Could you imagine? Oh, that would, but I don't, here's my question though. And it sounded like Thomas said a few different, not variations of this, but added some information to more interviews than others where I don't know if they actually knew what word it was, but they had come up with all of the potential words it could be. And so I don't know if they actually did unlock it, but I think they knew that it would be like maybe one of these, whatever, however, 4 words, 5, whatever it could have been, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do think that would have been a fascinating thing if they, like, what would happen in that instance if they did unlock it and take it out and then give it back to unlocked? Like what I don't know. I'm very curious. Very curious.
I don't know either. All right. Well, we can go to Appendix A, which discusses players keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And we talk about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. Now, Kamilla and Kyle were definitely targeting the strongest threat from their point of view. Who was the person that could cause them the most trouble if he stuck around? Oh, that would be Thomas, in their opinions. We've already mentioned earlier that the two of them did a good job of out-scheming him. Kamilla made up the lie that she was on the bottom. Kyle followed suit. It was such good acting that Shaheen was completely fooled. And, again, I know Thomas said in his interviews that he wasn't around, and if he had been, based on what he saw on TV, he would have picked up on it. It's easy to say now when there's no way to judge it, but, he wasn't there. All we know is that it worked.
Yeah, it definitely did. Very clearly worked. They did a great job keeping their end goals in mind and unfortunately messing up Thomas's.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what I was saying before about keeping end goals in mind is to think of this as the real way to win the war. against
Right.
the other 6-person tribe. And I think this is like where you pull out all the stops. Like this
Yeah.
felt like, remember that in David versus Goliath when the Davids like use all their advantages all at once
Right.
to turn the tables, and then it worked. Like, that was the moment to do it, and this is the moment.
Yeah.
Even though it's harder because we're in the majority. We don't need to do that, but you had to realize like she had gone on a journey, so she could have something. And like you said, 1 in 3 chance. That's not good on an idol if it's there.
Right.
And shots in the dark. Right. This was the moment.
Yeah.
I keep saying
Now, one other thing Kamilla tried that didn't work so well was talking about Thomas lying to his tribe by using the information she got from Star on the sit-out benches. Now, none of that probably mattered in the end, although, Jeremy, I think you had mentioned earlier that her bringing it up might have made Joe and Shaheen a little bit more willing to work with her because she appeared willing to work with them. I think it was a good gameplay attempt on her part. If they could have flipped one of the other two, they wouldn't have needed the idol and the extra vote. They don't know in that immediate moment that those three are literally a named alliance all coming over together. I mean, what are the odds of that? And plus it gives us additional insight as to why they wanted to go after Thomas instead of one of the other two, as we discussed earlier.
I think this is going to have an interesting effect on Star as well. When they do finally, if they all come together at the merge and you have Joe and Shaheen saying, well, gee, Star, like, thanks for throwing Thomas under the bus and telling Kamilla all of this information. So I think that's something that might come back later as well.
I mean, Kamilla will just tell him too.
Yeah, I mean, Star didn't throw anyone under the bus. She just, Star was like, "Hey, what happened over there?" And she was like, "Oh, Thomas said he had the option and didn't play."
Right. But still, sharing information with what at that point in time is enemy. Right. Yeah.
Now, there is also the issue of who the California girls targeted, and that is Kyle, and why they chose him. Joe told Kamilla that they have the muscle. It doesn't do any good to have a bunch of jocks and lose at the end. And, clearly they did try to make use of Kamilla in the puzzle part. They failed because they were like, oh, this is moving heavy pieces around. We can stick Kamilla here and she can guide us. And, the muscle guys can move the pieces. Not realizing she didn't have a 360-degree view. She could only see the front. And where did they mess up? In the back, the part that she absolutely could not see.
Right.
And so yeah, they did value her, I think, for puzzles. And, Shaheen made the points that Kamilla was at the bottom of her alliance, which we knew she wasn't. So they could pull her in, which we know they couldn't. So, there were good reasons for them to target Kyle.
David, I was looking at my handy dandy poster here.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
And, and I'm wondering what rule does being good at games, puzzles, and challenges fall under?
It depends. Well, when you say being good, it doesn't really fall under anything except in Appendix A in terms of like when someone is choosing to vote you out or not because you're good or because you're not. Because otherwise, it's not a strategic rule. It's just you either are or you aren't.
Yeah, like, Carson went out there because he memorized all the stuff. Or, at this point, if I was going to go out there, I'm going to like try to practice some motion, some ghetto version of some motion or something. Or I'm going to get my bean bags and toss them through tires,
Right.
Or I'm going to become a PE teacher like Mitch so that I can be really good at these silly things.
Yes. Yes. One of my, the father of the groom gift that my son gave me was a 3D printed Survivor puzzle that I have not tackled yet. So I need to.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Yes, he has a 3D printing, a little side business. He doesn't print the Survivor puzzles.
I know he does the dragons and
he
things,
does
right?
the dragons. He has little, this is just a little, you can play with that. You got other little doohickeys you can play with, and
that's so fun.
Like you mentioned, here's the little dragon that he's got.
I love the dragons. They're so cute.
So yes,
cool.
Maybe he can 3D print me a rock.
I'm sure he could. He 3D printed a lot of
Anyway,
his a lot of the gifts. Like my other son, one of the co-best men, got a 3D printed Wrigley Field.
Oh, that's so
So
neat.
yeah.
What a great little thing. That's
Yeah.
great. Love
So.
that.
All right. Well, on that note, it is about time to wrap things up. So, Jeremy, what are your final thoughts on Justin?
Not Justin.
Did I say Justin again?
You did say Justin.
I see. This is what happens when you compress it again. What are your final thoughts on Thomas? No, I just want to go back and say, what are your final thoughts? On
My Thomas. Okay, so I think I like Thomas a lot. He played a great game overall. I think, given the circumstances, we're nitpicking, but these are tough situations. I think that he did play a pretty solid game, and he had a lot of win equity that I think in a few other slightly different scenarios, he could have gone very deep into this game and had a good chance to win it. However, there are two reasons that I think Thomas lost, one proximate and one sort of big picture fundamental one. The proximate one is mainly this violation of Rule 7, which is dealing with idols and advantages. And knowing in a 3-2 scenario, he should have known that Kamilla probably had an advantage, and there very well might have been an idol, a high enough percentage of an idol, that they should pull out all the stops at this vote to end the Loggy Siva war that was coming. And the way to win that war was not at the merge or mergatory, it was now. And looking beyond the 3-2 advantage, he should have said, nope, we have to absolutely slam dunk this thing. We have to spike the football and use the steal a vote, taking control, not just of this green tribe, but the whole game. So that's the proximate one. But I think the big picture one, maybe, and this could have hurt him down the road with his own alliance, was this idea that he said in the final confessional. I was scared to be myself, and I think that a part of that is a fear of being too vulnerable, too honest with an alliance that you're building trust with. So therefore he got caught in a lie by Kamilla. That lie led Kamilla to have inroads with the California Girls Alliance, which meant that they targeted Kyle, and Kyle and Kamilla saw that happening, and so that they knew who should have the idol and who it should be played on. So scheming and plotting too much by not being open, by that vulnerability of being so honest with your own alliance, is what led to a correct idol play, meaning that Thomas got idled out. So in summary, Thomas said he was scared to be himself, which is another way of saying he doubted himself. And you never want to be a doubting Thomas, especially on Survivor. And that is why Thomas lost.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Thomas, a doubting Thomas. I'm so very sorry to hear this about you. But I would like to point out that at the very beginning, before Thomas even went out there, he was asked about advantages. And his response was, I feel personally like advantages are incredible if you can keep them to yourself. I feel like new era chaos comes from thinking to tell one person about it. I'm old school, hence the t-shirt. I'm like idle in my underwear. We're never speaking about it. Also, I'm not leaving it in my bag. My plan is to just kind of hopefully try and figure out where they are and weaponize that information. Or maybe if I come across one, lead someone to it so I know they have it. And then I can use that against them down the road. I don't want to beware advantage. Okay, I don't want it. I want to know who has it, and I want to tell everyone else that they have it. Watch me find one tomorrow. So I thought that was fascinating. It was fascinating because it all really kind of happened, right? I mean, he almost planned out his own demise in this one answer. And I was stunned because you know what, Thomas? What you needed to do was take that advantage out of your underwear and use it, just as Jeremy just said. You needed to, you had to, because in this particular moment, it was the one trick that you had, the one weapon you had that you could have used to try to save yourself in a situation that you had completely read perfectly well. You knew they were coming for you. You knew the votes were going to be on you, and you knew that they probably had something because Kamilla had also gone on the journey. So I can appreciate Thomas for his desire to want to be old school and keep this information to himself 100%. But in this situation, Jeremy, you said it fantastically correct. He needed to get ahead of this and then save face later with the people that he played this game with if he needed to. You have to fix it while you still can, because now you can't. You're out of the game, unfortunately. And Kamilla is still there and Kyle is still there. And they're there because you weren't able to stop their great gameplay that they were using against you. Thomas was so enjoyable, such a great person to watch. He had, I do believe, all of the tricks that he needed to get very far in this game. He was sociable, he was likable, villainous. I love that he wanted to be that villain, wanted to do all of those sneaky things, but he wanted to do it in order to further his own game. And I love that he was thinking game. And I just wish that he could have been able to play more of the game and set aside this idea of loyalty for just 1 minute. Play New Era for just a minute. I know some of us don't love New Era as much as old school, but unfortunately, you're in the New Era and you got to face it and you got to deal with it and play with it. So, Thomas, I definitely want to hang out with you at some point, please, because I think you would be so much fun to do so. Loved watching you. Loved hearing all of your interviews, both before and now, even though it was too soon. So, yeah, note to self, take it out of your underwear and play it when you have to. So that's my thoughts on Thomas.
All right. Well, I feel like we only got a small taste of what Thomas could have brought to Survivor. But in those few episodes, he showed us what might have been. Thomas was a schemer at heart, but he was out-schemed. Earlier, we discussed that he may have out-schemed himself as well. But I still turn it around and give credit to Kamilla and Kyle. Yes, he had the ability to steal a vote. And if he had played it right, he potentially could have used it to save himself. Yes, he was overly focused on not letting his allies know that he'd lied to them, such that it ended up impacting their ability to play around the possibility that Kyle or Kamilla had something. But it seemed unlikely that one of them had an idol or would hit a shot in the dark and target him, especially since they had done such a good job of convincing that, as Kyle and Kamilla had done such a good job of convincing the California girls that they weren't working together. So you have that debate over the overall assessment of his situation based on the information he knew or believed he knew at the time. While an idol obviously played a major role, the rest of the end of Thomas's game came through gameplay. Kyle and Kamilla were outnumbered, but figured out a way around it. They worked the other three to determine who they were aiming at, and they figured out who their own best target was. Thomas was sneaky and went on a journey, and they didn't know if he had an advantage, but they did know he lied to his own allies about it. He thought he would be the last California girl to be targeted when it came to threat levels, but as he said, he underestimated himself. Kyle and Kamilla, however, saw who the real threat was among the group when it came to gameplay, and that is why Thomas lost.
So sad.
So sad that you cursed another person. Yes.
I'm so sorry, Thomas. So sorry.
So, before we get to our predictions for next episode, I want to let everyone know that next week you won't be saying, "I'm pissed," because Liz Wilcox is returning as our guest once again. Now, in addition to that, we want to remind everyone that the rules we just discussed are available in poster form, poster on a t-shirt form, or checklist on a t-shirt form.
That's right.
So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed for any of those and all of those things.
All of those things.
Also, wanted to see
Yeah?
that right. See? So, Jeremy, I, of course, mentioned a lot earlier in my introduction of you about where you can be found at any given time. How can people reach you or see what you have to say?
Well, I write a lot about medicine and public health on Substack called Inside Medicine. And it's free, but there's also a paid version if you want to get more access. And would love to see people there. I always try to respond to comments and ideas. On the socials, I am at Jeremy Samuel Faust on Instagram and Threads. I'm on Blue Sky. I don't know how to say what my thing on Blue Sky is, but I'm the Jeremy Faust that David Bloomberg follows on Blue Sky. And I'm still on the other X thing, but that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I love that. I suppose I can tell you where you can find me too, right? Are we doing that now too?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm at Jessica Lewis 89 on both Blue Sky and that X thing that's still out there. And I'm also the one that follows Jeremy Faust on Blue Sky. So if you're looking to confirm who he is. And then also on Instagram, I am at Jessica Lewis 6789. My social media, though, is lacking in comparison to David Bloomberg, who is the social media guru. I'm adding words together here. So much so that he has a link tree that he will definitely share with you, so you can see all of the places to follow all things David Bloomberg.
Yes, you can find all of that at linktree/David Bloomberg. There's a dot before the EE in the URL there. You can find me directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg. And as far as text-based, that is definitely the place to find me. So come on over there if you're not already. I as well post lots of videos, typically 3 or 4. Obviously, this past week has been a little slower, but the reality TV short videos you can find on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, where I'm at David Bloomberg TV. Right now, they are, of course, a mix of U.S. Survivor, Australian Survivor, including mini Why Blank Lost videos, Deal or No Deal Island, and Extracted. Sometimes I'll find a good one for Amazing Race as well, but I can't say that I have that regularly. So, with all of that said, it is time for predictions. Dun, dun, dun. Next episode's preview.
Yeah,
Jeremy's trying to hide. He's disappeared off the screen. So is Jessica. Okay.
It's all on you, David Bloomberg. Right.
Next episode's preview showed Kamilla and Kyle talking about how they are set and can run the game, which immediately made me say, uh-oh, especially since we know they don't have the extra vote anymore. When I initially saw the preview, I was like, oh, that's because they have the extra vote still, and therefore it's 3-2, so they're good. But no, they don't. So I don't know how they think in a 2-2 tribe they are running the game. I have no idea why they would say that, unless it's a quote from maybe one of them gets back out there and finds something else again. That's a possibility. The other thing we get from the preview is that Say is causing chaos, which I know will shock everyone. Now, on her tribe, with her teaming up with Bianca and Cedric teaming up with Mitch and Chrissy to target Bianca, it will be very interesting to see how things split if they end up going to tribal council. But I feel like there was enough focus on that tribe in the preview that it means they don't go to tribal council. And so we don't have to worry about any of that. Which means that I'm going to suggest something that sounds crazy. That there's a challenge that David's tribe loses. In which case, we will get a battle of people offering up their original tribe mates on a platter, like I discussed earlier. I'm going to say, okay, then it'll be whose offer is taken. Will they go after Star or Charity or someone else entirely? I think when the others hear about Star maybe having an idol or a Beware advantage that hasn't turned into an idol yet, that will back them away from her. I think they'll be afraid of that. And I think, therefore, Charity will be the one who gets taken out.
So I have a question. We are down to now 14, right?
Sure. Yes.
Well, so we expect there to be a merge at normally, is it 13? Is that the number that we're normally?
I don't know. I wait to see the preview of Jeff saying, drop your buffs.
I mean, there's no merge this time or pre-mergatory, I don't think.
Oh, sure. There's always a mergatory.
I'm saying this next episode feels like
Oh, no,
another...
this episode. Yeah.
No, I'm just working out the idea of like a David going home. And I only say that because I feel like he would be the one that they would be like, he's the merge boot because he's going to
Right.
just, run the show against Joe in all of the challenges to come. So that's why I was asking like where we were at. Because I'm terrible at this, David. So I have to try to work through all of the potential wrong answers, right? I have to get there somehow.
I have some wrong answers if you want me to go first.
Oh, I love your wrong answers, Jeremy. Let's go.
Let me tell you what's not going to happen by telling you my predictions.
Love it.
Thankfully, in my job, I'm better than this. So I was just,
thank God, because you're like, I don't know, a really important person in your job. So
well,
I'm
an ER doctor. We always say like we just can't be wrong. We don't have to be right, but we can't be wrong.
I mean, it's somewhat important. Yeah. Yes.
So I was just looking through the who's on whose tribe now, and because I really can't remember it. And as I'm looking at the new shuffle, the purple tribe is Charity, David, Eva, Mary, and Star. I have a hard time seeing them lose, but then again, the green tribe it was hard to see them lose. I don't know. I think to read the preview tea leaves as David did, is to say maybe it's not the fact that Say is sort of making chaos is not the end of that story. It's just part of the story. So I'm going to say that the orange tribe, which is the Siva tribe, which is Say, Mitch, Chrissy, Cedric, and Bianca, that they will go to tribal. And Say will be working to throw Cedric under the bus, thinking that that's the best way to save herself. But the others will see what had happened. They'll see that the previous other 6-person tribe took a hit. And so now there's one original tribe with 6 left. That's original Siva. And so the Siva, the people who are on that tribe are on the tribe that I said will go to tribal, which is actually still Siva, would be Chrissy and Mitch. And Say we'll try to work with them to get Cedric, but I actually think that they're going to think, well, wait a minute, the old greens, who cares? They're 3. It's the old oranges we got to get rid of, right? Right. And so what they'll do is they'll get rid of Bianca. I'm sorry, the old purples. They will get rid of Bianca. I think no. I'm wrong. Because she was with I was thinking that they're going to try to gang up on whoever is the remaining 6, which 6.
Yeah, that would have to be
orange.
Mitch or Chrissy.
The old orange. So Mitch or Chrissy. Oh God, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'll just say it'll be Cedric, my winner pick.
See, I'm going to take everything that you just said, Jeremy, because I think you were so spot on. But then I'm going to go.
I lost the thread. Yeah.
Yeah, at the very end, Mitch.
Mitch.
Because they are, yes. And I'm going to say Mitch because they are going to be focusing on the old Siva people because of the numbers.
Right.
And we've all talked about how much we love Mitch. Now, Mitch has an extra vote, right?
He does.
Yes.
He does have an extra vote, but it won't necessarily. So let's see if we look at the breakdown, because that would be if Chrissy and Mitch are voting together. If we imagine
even without that, I don't see Chrissy turning on Mitch, and I don't see Cedric turning on Mitch after the emotional connection that they made.
Oh, that's a very fair point. So
I shouldn't talk you out of it. I should let you make an
talk me out of it, because Bianca doesn't have a vote either. So that's
so it would literally be Say against all of them.
Oh, see, now you just made me change my mind, because I feel like that's interesting. We'll just go Say. Why not?
Okay. Just say.
Just say.
Yes. All right. Well, with that said, hopefully we didn't forget someone, not having a vote or extra votes or something like that. But
it's too much.
Yes. I mean, at least we cleared out 3 things in one tribal council here. So As we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. You can get access to all the special podcasts that are put out just for patrons, plus the Facebook groups and Discord. So you also support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Also, make sure you go to, if you're not already subscribed to all of the RHAP Survivor podcasts, you can do so at weknowsurvivor.com. You see all the various podcasts there. You can select your service of choice, and boom, you're done. You're subscribed, and you get us automatically, and you get the know-it-alls and the B&B and Survivor International and all the other things that Rob does and other people do. So as far as it pertains to Survivor. So you definitely want to go to weknowsurvivor.com.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to thank everyone at RHAP, including Scott, Jess, and Doug, for all of the incredible work that you do, not just on the work for Why Blank Lost, but all of the incredible content that you did hear David Bloomberg just referenced. There are so many things for you to listen to, so many various shows that are highlighted and talked about. It's just an incredible amount of content. So you should definitely do all things RHAP. And you will learn all things on We Know Survivor if you are a huge Survivor lover. But then reality TV, there's so many options. So please go there. And then also thank you, Will from America, for the music that you created for the audio version of Why Blank Lost. It's lovely and catchy, and it's a great little tune. So thank you for that. And Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us again. I always love it when you do. You are incredibly great at this too. I know you are an ER doctor and all that extra stuff, and that's a big deal, but this is great too. You killed it. Your insight is amazing. I am impressed that you took an entire day off to just prepare for this. So thank you for that. But it's always a joy to have you. And I promise you, we're going to work on getting you an award for the next time you come on, because I have a sneaky suspicion you'll come back. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah, saying you killed it to an ER doctor is probably not necessarily a good thing under normal circumstances. So.
Hey, just for his podcast abilities, okay? Podcast abilities.
Very, very nice. I will just say again to everyone watching, it is so hard what these people do. I literally took time off today to do this. I needed it. And also so thank you, David and Jessica, for doing what you do, and RHAP for making all this stuff happen. I wake up every day stressed about the universe, and I listen to these podcasts, and I know it's a bunch of nonsense, but it is actually so therapeutic and helpful to me to have something fun and also intellectually stimulating because of all the things, whether it's social or the math of it all. And so what you all do in this fandom is really keeping me sane, which is why even though things are crazy right now, the answer is always going to be yes, David, yes, Jessica, 1,000 times yes. I'll come on and pretend I know a third of what you know. So thank you all, and I would love to do it again.
All right. Well, yes, thank you so much. Let me add to what Jessica said. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for coming back again, taking a day off. That is dedication. And thank you, of course, Jessica, for always being here. And, we will see everyone in a week. And you can, find us on social media before then. So bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.